Welcome, Alicia Alpenfels, to episode 7 of BLUECAST. I think we've worked together for 14 years, 15 years.
Yeah, probably. It was. So I joined Premier in 2009, and you were already there, weren't you?
So I think I was in 08. I think I joined.
Yeah.
So
and we were there for a long time.
Yeah. And then we didn't work
Shared
together.
a wall.
We shared a wall. We definitely shared a wall. We could hear each other hanging up phones on the banging our phones against the wall for the whole time I was there. Actually, we shared a wall, and then we didn't work together for a while, and then he came and worked with us here
In
at Planet.
November of 2020.
2020. So
Yeah.
we've been together for almost
4 years again. Yeah, is that crazy?
That's time
At
flies.
least 3.5. Yeah.
Time flies,
November
doesn't
of
it?
2020.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was fast.
I just wanted to bring you on because you've been in this business for a really long time, and I think you have a lot of information to share as a loan officer to the world.
Thanks.
Your struggles, your ups and downs,
I've got all of them.
everything that you've been through. I think people need to hear your story.
Okay.
So I usually started off with an intro. I want you to kind of go back and I know we've talked about this in the past. You did social work before you got into mortgages, and I don't even know exactly when that was, but I want you to kind of give all the listeners and viewers a little history of
Sure.
what you've done, where you've been,
Gotcha. Okay.
and just a little background. So shoot.
Okay, sounds good. So I grew up in Boulder. My husband grew up in Boulder. We're both Boulder natives. I went to college at A&M, Texas A&M, and then I came home from college, got home on a Tuesday, and on Thursday my mom said, "You can't live here." And I thought...
Were you 21 at the time or something?
I was broke. I was broke.
Yeah.
And there was no conversation of let me set you up in the apartment, let me give you 3 months. She just looked at me and said, "You can't live here."
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay. And so I ended up finding a job living with developmentally disabled adults. And it gave me a place to live. And I already had a degree in sociology. And I'd been working with developmentally disabled adults kind of on and off for the last few years. But all of a sudden, Monday, so I get home from college on Tuesday. On Thursday, my mom says, "You can't live here." And on Monday, I moved in with 2 developmentally disabled adults and then worked in that industry for 11 years and never stopped.
11 years. So that
Yeah.
was in the 90s?
Yeah, I started in 92 and left in, I'm sorry, I started in 91 and left in 2002.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I had no training. I just started living with these clients. And what it was some individuals needed 24-hour supervision. So I was the staff person on charge for 24-hour supervision because they needed more help, more assistance.
And then that involved, because weren't you a social worker for a while?
I was. So I did.
Towards the end of that 11-year period, you were in social work?
I kind of worked my way up through the company. So I lived with clients for 2.5 years, lived with different clients in different situations, but it was always the clients that needed more support, that couldn't live independently. And then I was a case manager, social worker for 3 or 4 years, whatever it was, 5 years. And then the last couple of years I ran the program.
You ran the whole thing?
Yeah, I ran the whole thing.
How big was the program?
I kind of forget now. I had a $3.5 million budget, and I had 77 people and 92 people. And I can't remember if I had 77...
Are those clients?
Well, that's why I can't remember if I had 77 clients and 92 staff or 92 clients and 77 staff.
Okay.
But either way, it was a long time ago, and I kind of forget the specifics. But either way, I had the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Right.
And I was late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
And
it's a lot.
It was a lot. And it was very life and death. Every day, it was life and death.
Right.
And I spent hours sitting with people, with families in the hospital while their loved ones were ill. Just different. Yeah, super heavy. Yeah. All the time. And so I kind of burned out.
Yeah. So, and that's how you got out of that industry and into mortgages. What was that transition like? How do you go from being a social worker in that environment into mortgage banking?
Well, I decided to leave social work, and I was like, I have no job skills. I mean, I had a ton of job skills because I'd been running this huge organization. But you think, well, how does that translate? But I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out my path. And when I was a kid, my mom was a real estate agent in Boulder, and so I knew the gig. She would talk about septics at the dinner table, and that's what we did. We talked.
So you had background.
Yeah, I had kind of background, but I was broke. I had a heap of a car. And I had a dog that was always a lab that was always wet in my car. And I was like, I can't. And back then you always drove your clients around.
Right.
Like you always drove your clients around.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't afford to buy a new car, and this car's trashed, so I better not do the real estate side. I'm going to look at the mortgage side. And that was actually how I decided to do mortgages over like being a real estate agent.
And then, so where did you start?
I called my loan officer and said, will you give me a job?
Which was?
Dennis Stingle, and he owned Dominion Mortgage. Great guy.
Yeah.
And he started me off, and the first day he hired me as the receptionist. And I said, oh my God, like I need to make a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
And I needed to make $33,000 a year to like break even.
Right.
And he laughed at me and said, I'm starting you at 36. And I was like, what? I've been running the world. Like I've had the weight of the shoulders.
As
like,
a receptionist, 36.
Yeah, 36. So I'm making more than what I was making running a program. And I was like, holy moly. So it was just like life-changing.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I loved what I did, but it was very hard to be in my 20s doing something like that.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a lot. It was a lot of life and
death.
Yeah. So anyway, I started as a receptionist, and then I was an assistant, and then I processed files. I just worked my way up.
So how long did it take you to from when you became a receptionist to when you actually were like a loan officer? How many?
Well, I started working on files like 3 weeks after I was a receptionist. So
helping, like being a loan officer assistant or like a loan officer assistant.
Yeah, I started almost right away.
Yeah.
And around 2005, he said, "You've got to be a loan officer," and I was like, "No, thank you." And
you did?
Yeah, I was like, absolutely not.
Why?
Because I was still so broke. Like I just really had this.
Oh, you didn't want to give up the salary.
Yeah,
that's
like,
why. I thought it was like I can't do this.
Well, there was I'm sure that was in there too, but really it was like I had been broke.
Yeah.
And I was still broke, and I was like, I can't do this.
And so how did he convince you?
He
to
gave me a salary. Like he was super generous, and he said, "I'm going to give you a salary. I really want you to do this. You're going to still keep helping on the files, but then you're going to get a commission." And it was
transitional.
It was transitional phase. And so we did that for a couple of years, and then finally he was like, "Will you please trust yourself?"
Right.
And I was like, "Okay, fine, I can do it now."
Yeah.
So he was extremely generous, because I don't think I had the personality to put myself out there to do it.
I mean, honestly, I feel like even in this day and age, like the best way to teach somebody how to be a loan officer is to start them under somebody else.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Just have a team or whatever. Yeah. And I think they do that a lot in the real estate side too, right? Like people have teams. And you come into the business and you help whoever the senior person is.
I always tell people that the best way to get in is to be an apprentice.
Yeah,
just treat it like an apprenticeship and just literally work your way through it.
Right.
Because when I was first starting, I mean, this was like 2003, 2004, whenever it was, and there was no doc loans and stated loans and all of those. And my job at the first couple of years was to type in everybody's debt. So, because it didn't auto-populate into our applications. So I would have to type in everybody's debt. And back then, I mean, people had crazy credit cards. Like I would almost they would come into the office and I'd have to walk by the glass conference room just to kind of put the name with the credit card debt. Like I was bad.
You're like, who's got all that debt?
No, there's some crazy debt back out there.
Yeah.
But I would go to the loan officer and say, why did you do it this way?
Uh-huh.
And why did you do this? Why did you do that? And at first they thought I was had an opinion.
Right.
And they finally realized I was just trying to figure it out and just try to figure out what the trends were. Because they were all doing this. It just took me a second to be like, why are you doing an arm versus a 30-year fix?
Understand
why are you no doc? Yeah. Just kind of trying to understand it, because I've always figured if I can understand the rule, I'll remember the rule.
Yeah.
That's how I've kind of treated this business. And so anyway, that was how I started. So around 2005, I started originally.
And then you left that company after you were a loan officer, because you went to work for Lou Barnes for a long time.
I did. I left in 2008, and the mortgage crisis was going on.
Yeah.
Small mom and pop company.
Yeah.
And I was worried they were going to close, and they didn't. They did it. They might even still be in business.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They didn't close. I was wrong.
So you left Dominion to go work for Lou Barnes.
Yeah. And then Lou Barnes closed and went to Premier because of the mortgage crisis.
And then that's when we met.
Yeah. And that's when we met. Yeah.
And then you were at Premier for a long time.
11 years.
11 years. And then you came to us.
Yeah.
Planet and Allied. Yeah. How do you feel like all those years of social work applies to what makes you a great loan officer?
I can connect with people.
You think that's the greatest skill you learn?
Yeah, if I can, I always feel like if I can talk to somebody on the phone, my ability to keep that loan, capture that loan, I'm much more successful, because I start to talk to them like real people. Like,
Yeah.
I want to help. I
You
come
wa-
from
you
a
wanna-
servant role.
Which is like, this goes on a lot in a lot of the conversations I have on my podcast. Is like, because I firmly believe like the best salespeople aren't really salespeople. They're people that genuinely care about the people they're working for.
Absolutely, yeah.
And like want to do the best for them.
Yeah, for
right.
sure.
And it's like, and I always have like great people that are successful, like yourself, successful at real estate, whether it's on a real estate side, title side, mortgage side, where they're like, they're in it for the people.
Yeah.
They're not in it for the money.
Absolutely.
The money is like a byproduct
Yeah.
of what, you know what I mean? Of the of just your connection of wanting, and you said it yourself just a second ago, I'm a servant.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to serve people.
Yeah, I've never considered myself a salesperson. I just was having this conversation with somebody last weekend.
You were?
Yeah, of just saying, you can't sell $1 million loan at a 7.5% interest rate and feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Now, if it makes sense for the borrower and it's the right move for them and that's what they want, more power to it. I'm happy to help you with it. But I'm not going to sit down with somebody at a coffee shop and be like, you've got to get this $1 million loan and I'm going to put you in $7,000 a month debt. You've got to do it. Like, if it makes sense, let's do it.
Right.
And so I just really try to approach people. But I always feel like if
and on the flip side of that, I'm sure you're having the same conversation. Be like, look, if you feel like you can afford, this is the conversation I'm having.
Yeah.
Like, if you feel like you can afford this, it's not going to be this bad forever. Like, we'll get you refinanced at some point.
Yeah.
But just to even care enough where you're not just forcing loans down other people's throats is a different approach, right?
Yeah, I had a girlfriend growing up who ended up becoming a real estate agent, and she could sell a rock. I mean, this girl was
she could sell a rock.
I mean, she was so like her clients would call me on a Monday and say, "Hey, I met her over the weekend, and she told me I'm supposed to call you." Yeah. And I was like, "Do you know why?" And they're like, "No." And I was like, "Well, if she's having you call me, she probably wants you to buy a house." And they'll be like, "Oh, okay." I mean, she can sell anything. I can't do that. That's not.
So like these are people that were not even interested in buying a house.
Yeah, they were just
They're like, well, she's like, you need to own a house because that's how you build wealth.
Exactly.
I mean, she was probably right in some aspects, right?
Absolutely was. And it was like late, early 2010s, So she was absolutely right. She could sell anything. I just have never been good at that. So I come from a perspective of let me educate you.
Right.
And if this makes sense and if you think you can do it, let's do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do. I believe that the rates will go down. And if you can afford it now, let's get in while the prices are lower and, get in the market. Yeah. So I believe all that and I totally support all that. Yeah. But I also am not going to shove a mortgage down somebody's throat unless it really makes sense for them.
And I kind of feel like mortgage bankers and brokers traditionally have that like stigma about them, like attorneys or car salesmen, where they're like, people are like, oh, they just want to sell you rates to make money or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I feel like there is a lot of that out there, but I think the majority of the people that I surround myself with and that I work with aren't those people, right?
Not at all.
We come from a different place where we care about people. We just want to help people. We know the value, right? You feel like I know what the value is of people owning houses, like over the life of their loan. Like think of all the people. I think this was like I was talking to Ian in like the first episode, and it was like, I mean, think of over your 20 years, like how much you've helped.
Oh. I have clients reach out all the time.
And just
I had somebody reach out not too long ago, and they had made $250,000 in equity in 5 years. And she is a Montessori teacher. Yeah. And life-changing.
Just to have some gratitude and just be like, thank you so much for changing
somebody
my
just
life.
Connect with LinkedIn and say, I'm so glad you supported me in this purchase.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And he was probably 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And he was like, I can't believe I'm living in Longmont. I love Longmont. I can't believe I get to stay here because you helped me.
Yeah.
And he just sent me
eventually you'll get priced out, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He just sent me a little note through LinkedIn, just being like, hey, I just wanted to reach out.
God, that feels great.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. It's like, that's what I do it for.
I'm like hanging out with some like friends or acquaintances. And, when I used to live in Netherlands, it was a small town. So yeah. And people would all the time be like, I just want to thank you. Oh, yeah. Like 10 years ago, you did this loan for me. And, Absolutely. And it's like pretty amazing. Right? To look back and like.
We change people's lives.
Yeah.
And we create, I really, as much as I say I'm not a salesperson, I'm not a salesperson. I will never force you to do something or really talk you into it. Right. But at the same time, I'm passionate about people buying homes because of the stability it provides, the long-term financial gains you get from it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just think it's huge.
I think pushing somebody into a 7.5% jumbo loan product is a good segue to the current market conditions.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah.
How do you feel about it? I mean, in general, look, you've had almost a couple years to digest what's going on.
Yeah.
I know personally, like your ups and downs, right? Because
Yeah.
we work together.
Sure.
But let's talk about it. Let's talk about what it's done, how you feel when you're like, what am I going to do? How is this, it's not an easy time. And actually, I was just, talking with Brian and Todd about this kind of same stuff. It's like, we're not alone.
Oh, no. It's
right?
industry-wide.
It's
all over the
industry-wide,
country.
and it's like, this is the time when the toughest survive.
Yeah.
Right? So I want to get your opinion on what you think about it and how you're dealing with it. And so talk to me.
Well, I think when it first started, so in summer of 2021, we started to see the slowdown.
Right.
And I had my head down working super hard for probably 9 or 10 years. Yeah. And when I say working really hard, like 60 to 80 hours a week, my husband was our primary provider for our kids. Like my job was to work, and that's what I did, and I did it really well.
Yeah.
And so when the market started to slow down, I was like, thank goodness. I was like, I'm tired.
I think we were kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, like I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I had just had COVID. My dad had just died.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I need a break. Like It was May of 2021, and I just went into that summer just being like, I am fried.
So like mentally, you're just like, I'm taking a step back. I'm
just taking a step back.
I'm not going to push for business.
I'm just going to let it run. Yeah. And then around July, August, that's when the faucet, like when it really stopped, like the faucet just turned off and like the phone calls stopped and everything stopped.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, it's just a little different. All right, I'm not really used to this. It's been a long run since I've not had my phone ring. Okay. But I was still tired, and I was like, it's okay. Like, I deserve a break. So I kind of did that for a little too long. And then around like January.
So when did the switch flip in your head and you're like, I'm ready? Like what, 8 months, a year?
I would say probably early January 2023. No. 22. I'm sorry. So it was 2022. I'm off a year. It was May of 2022 when it slowed down.
Okay.
That I was off a year. It was May of 22 that slowed down. It was probably early 2023 where I was like, I'm bored now.
Yeah.
Like I've watched enough Netflix.
You're ready.
Yeah.
I've watched enough Netflix.
Yeah, I've been sitting around.
I've been chilling it up.
Watching Netflix. I'm up on all my shows. Because I hadn't had that for years.
Yeah.
Like I would leave the house at 8:30 in the morning and I'd get home at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. It was crazy.
Well, I mean, especially over COVID when we were like 60 long pipelines. Like, you just didn't rest, right?
I just walked in the basement every day and would come up like 12 hours later.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind it at all. But around, spring of 2023, I was like, okay, now I'm bored. And it was tricky because I was having both my knees replaced. So 2023 was not a huge year for me because I was doing both my knees.
Yeah.
So it was tricky to kind of figure out how to get back in the market and stay active when you were having these huge surgeries. Yeah. So it wasn't a good year for me, but I felt like I was getting back engaged. And I'm definitely at a point now where I'm excited to talk to people again.
Yeah.
Like I like talking to my clients, and it's fun to get back on the phone with people and be like, okay, let's do this.
And the market kind of feels like it's picking up a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think your phone's ringing more than it was.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
A while ago. And so what are the kind of things that you're doing to help speed things up and get back in the market?
Well, I'm going back to the basics. Like I'm going back to what I was doing in 2017, 2018, 2019 when I was killing it, and no longer just relying on just word of mouth. Because I got overly confident. Like I had a large enough book of business that I thought that I would always have like a base amount of work at all times. And so this was a humbling experience where all of a sudden I was like, oh, hold it, that phone really doesn't ring. But it's different. People aren't moving. There's nowhere to go. We had the fire. all these different things happened. COVID, all this different stuff. But I'm really trying to go back to the basics and be like, what was really working for me in like 2017 to 2019 that was where I was really connecting with people. And I'm going back to my clients. I'm going back to them to make sure that they know that I'm here to support them. I'm going back and changing how I do my gifting system, and probably going to have some sort of client appreciation event this year.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and kind of doing that because just online isn't enough.
Right.
Like people need contact after all these years of COVID. We need to connect again. And I was notorious for just like hiding out because I was so busy. I just worked at home. It was no big deal. Yeah. And then when we got slow, and then I had my knees replaced. Like I've just been hiding out for too long. Yeah. And so I feel like it's time to get back out there and just really connect again.
It's funny because I have like the same feelings coming. Maybe it's just coming out of winter in general. Like when spring hits, summer hits, and I'm like, I just have to leave my house.
Yeah.
Like I have to be out of my house.
Yeah.
Like I have to be somewhere doing something, not working in my office at my house, which is really my kitchen. I just sit in my kitchen. I have an office, but I don't use it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that feeling is, but for some reason I just get to the point where I'm like, I have to not be here.
Yeah.
Like I have to be out and be around people, you know,
having
like conversations, socializing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I feel like depressed if I'm not doing that, right?
Oh, I totally had that last year. Mostly it was because I'd had both the knees replaced and I couldn't drive.
Well, you can't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like magnified.
So, exactly. So now it's like 10 times the...
Like if I was still talking to 20 clients a day, I wouldn't have felt it because I had those conversations to connect with people.
Yeah.
But the phone's not ringing and I can't go for a walk without my walker.
Right.
And I can't get in the car and go anywhere. And I mean, I was getting really down. Like it was way too quiet. Like my family would leave at like 7:30, 7:40. Yeah. Leave at 7:30, 7:45 in the morning and roll in around 4:30 or 5.
Wow.
And my poor husband, I would just like meet him at the door and just want to chat. And he's a teacher overstimulated. And he's like, I need 5 minutes. And I'm like,
you're like, I've been at home alone all day.
I know, and I cry. So like, you need to talk to me. You know?
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'd almost be like, drive for 10 extra minutes. Because when you walk in the door, I'm
gonna be here.
Yeah, I'm like stuck here all day.
Yeah.
So.
And so you feel like you're feeling better now.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Taps turned on a little bit.
Absolutely.
You're out there doing stuff.
Yeah.
You're also started working on some social media stuff too.
I know.
You didn't bring that up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring it up.
I know. The Instagram. I'm up to like 5 posts.
I saw your post about the lightning.
Wasn't that crazy?
And it was really cool. I was like, that's a really good post, Alicia.
Well, thank you.
And I think that's a way that you can still connect with people.
Yeah.
You haven't really connected with people in other ways. You know? You get a little bit of feedback there. It's not like the same as being in person, of course. But yeah. No,
I'm making myself learn Instagram, and I'm up to 5 whole posts.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not like not a pro, but at least I kind of know how to do it.
Just do it. Just do it. Just take pictures.
Yeah. Daryl took that video, and we were standing on the porch, and the kids. We had to do it twice because the kids were out there, and the first they're yakking, and somebody had to go to the bathroom or something stupid. So we made them all leave, and we did it again. But that lightning storm lasted like 30 minutes.
I mean, what is it? Let's just talk about, because I know my own experience in being a parent, because I was a single parent. I raised 2 kids and more.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, what has that experience been like for you? And I know your kids are older now. They're all in high school.
Yeah.
Your daughter graduate next year?
Yeah, she's going into her senior year.
She's going into senior year. And your sons are going to be sophomores?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 15-year-olds that are going to be sophomores, boys, and then a daughter who's 16, about to turn 17, who will be a senior.
So tell me a little bit about your experience of being you said yourself, you've worked 60, 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
In these kids, when you were raising these kids.
And
I know a lot about that. And I know what my regrets are and what my thoughts are, but I want to hear what you think about that, or look back on it and what.
Sure.
How was that?
I mean, I missed a lot. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I missed a lot. Since my husband's a teacher, back then he would get home at 3:30 from school.
Yeah.
And my mom would get the kids off the school bus. My husband would do whatever at school. He'd roll in maybe 3:30 or 4, and then he had the kids. Yeah. And that was the way we did it.
Daryl's a saint.
Yeah, he is a saint, and he's a better parent than I am, so it's probably worked out better. But he's a teacher.
Hopefully he watches this.
Yeah, he knows. I tell him all the time. But so he was really the primary parent, and I was the primary wage earner. Yeah. Like we just kind of changed roles. Yeah. And I missed a lot, and I would come home and I'd be like, "How was everybody's day?" And they'd say, "Fine."
Yeah.
"Oh, what'd you do?" "Oh, a little bit, here, there." Yeah. But I never knew like the details.
You never got the deep.
Yeah, I never got in deep of like what was going on. I mean, I was definitely a hands-on parent, but not when you work until 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock every night. You are missing key things during the week. Right. There's just no question about it. And so what I realized when COVID happened and all of a sudden I came home and I was working 12 hours in the basement, I didn't mind the 12 hours because I could hear them upstairs.
Right.
And I could hear the small conversations and, Aubrey came over or Aiden came over or they did this or they did that.
So you felt more connected.
I was more connected because even though I was still working a ton, I was getting the details that I wasn't getting from them before.
When you were out.
Yeah, and I didn't even really realize I was missing the details until all of a sudden I'm home and I can hear that the boys went fishing with so-and-so or they did this or they did that. Yeah. And I loved it.
That's cool.
So I've kind of always said to myself since then that I will work at home a good portion so that I know those details.
Yeah.
Because they all just grunt at me now. They're teenagers. They all go, I'm fine. You know, they don't tell me anything.
Yeah.
So if I don't,
you really have to sit down and have a conversation with them to get it out of them.
And they won't even make eye contact.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
you're like, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I just, being around is important. So I realized that was a huge shift.
Right.
And so now I'm really enjoying. I mean, I'm coming to the office to make sure I have focused time.
Yeah.
But I also really enjoy.
And to get that getting out feeling
that
we were talking
to
about
get
earlier.
Out, be around
You're like,
peers,
all right, I just need to be
colleagues,
exactly.
So do all of that, but then I also like working at home so that I can take somebody to a baseball practice or pick somebody up from football or so and so's buying a dress or you know whatever it is. I can just know those details because that's what I missed for a long time.
Well, it sounds like to me, and my take on it is that like it was a gift. The COVID thing was like a gift.
Oh, it was a
not
gift
only
for
financially
me.
because we were super busy, but the fact that you got to kind of focus your balance, work-life balance.
Absolutely.
And then actually like just kind of disconnecting for a year and a half, right, or a year. And kind of continued that.
Yeah,
I'm sure you were really close with your kids during that time.
Yeah, for
and now you're like the gratitude out of this whole thing for me, looking at you and the way you're talking about it is like you're like, I learned so much from this process.
Absolutely.
Right? And who you are now and how you feel, and you have such a good balance.
I know, it was crazy because I used to spend a fortune on coaches that would try to teach me life balance.
Yeah.
You know, I've had multiple coaches that would talk about life balance.
I can't learn anything unless I bang my head against the wall and do it.
Well, COVID had to bang me against my head against the wall. And so those coaches would be like, you've got to focus on your life balance. Like you can be as successful as you want, but if you don't have a relationship with your kids, you're miserable. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it wasn't by no means did I not have a relationship with my kids. I was at every baseball game, all that stuff. But I also was always working, and they knew I was always working. Like I had them trained at a young age. You do not make a noise in the car if mommy's on the phone. Like there was no he said it was just the way they were raised,
Yeah.
But I mean, I spent a fortune on coaches trying to create that life balance, and then COVID forced it on me.
Yeah.
And now I get it.
Yeah, and then the knee surgeries.
And the knee surgeries, and all those things like life just kind of pointed me in that direction.
That's
and
awesome.
now I do feel like, the kids and I are great. My husband's great. Like we're all just balanced.
What a great outcome.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah. I mean, that like if you're trying to find some positivity out of COVID, for me, I think it made a huge difference.
That's
in my family.
I mean, look, we talk all the time. We've never had this conversation. I love the side of that I would have never known if we wouldn't have had this conversation about it. I think it's wonderful. I mean, it's really cool that you were able to learn that through, you know what I mean? Some people never, we both know people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We totally know.
We know mentors that we've had that had never learned that lesson and will never understand this conversation
for sure.
and never understand what it means to be, involved and put people over money, your children especially.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like I have this saying, I put people over money.
Yeah.
Because so many people in the world don't.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We do it in our business. We started this conversation about that, right? Of like, we care about people. We're not doing it for the money. We do it because we care about people. Same thing with your children.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't work so hard so you miss your children's lives.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't really work.
Although now my kids look at me and they're like, so when we first slowed down and I was like sitting and watching my Netflix, they'd be like, do you still work?
So they're like, can you go back to work now?
And so often it'll be like they'll be like, how's the market? Yeah. Can I go to Starbucks?
What's your response?
I'm like, you can have the Starbucks this week.
You're like one. You get one.
And my daughter just the other day was like, are you busy enough that we can go to California? And I was like, I don't know. So they
understand.
Daryl always was very clear with them. When Dad works as a teacher, if I work longer, I just work longer.
Yeah.
Like I'm just working more.
Right.
If Mom works, Mom makes more money.
Right.
The harder Mom works, the Mom makes more money.
Yes.
So they were able to kind of always understand that. But it was funny in like 2022, fall of 22, when I was sitting around watching Netflix. They would just kind of walk by and stare at me and kind of be like, "Are we good? Like, are we gonna lose the house?" I'm like, "No, you're fine." It's just funny.
And I know you. So I want to move. Let's move topics a little bit.
Sure.
I know you've always, and we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. You've always been part of this mastermind group.
Yeah.
How long have you been part of the mastermind group?
Well, I've always been involved with coaching, or not always involved with coaching, but like probably 2013, 2015, I started to do coaching.
So a good 10 years.
Yeah, at least. We did, I did, I forget the one out in Oregon, Building Champions. Did Building Champions for years. Great guys. Loved those guys. And then in like 2019-ish, I got involved with Cindy Ertman with MME, which I forget what MME stands for. It's just been using that acronym for so long. And from that, I got this mastermind group there's about 10 of us that stay in contact. Yeah. And we just talk about the market and just kind of keep up with each other and support each other. And
what's the frequency of something like that?
Well, we just were in Florida together 2 weekends ago, just reconnecting. And then I'd say like once a quarter, we'll get on a Zoom call.
So it's not like monthly or anything?
No, it used to be. Like when we were actually coaching, we would get on the phone every other week. And then we had a couple trips where we would just stay to get together and focus on the mortgage industry, life balance, our health. I mean, just all of it. Yeah. Since that ended, this group, we're still good friends. Yeah. And we'll get together. And I would say probably, it's been a year since I did this, but I reached out probably a year ago and was like, I'm struggling. Yeah. Like, I need some ideas of how to grow my business. I just need a little love. Like, let's get on a Zoom call. And so people popped on, and I was just writing notes. Yeah. Of Teresa was doing this, and Denise was doing this, and Michelle's doing this.
And they all jumped on and were like, hey, this is what we're doing.
This is what we're doing to help and stuff like that. And it was huge. So it's really nice to have like this group. Yeah. And you and I, we both have a ton of friends in the industry. Yeah. There's always people to reach out to outside of this building. Right. But it's really nice to have a group that's outside of around the country, just to kind of see what's going on. And so like when we were together 2 weekends ago in Florida, we didn't talk about, we talked a little bit about what we were doing, but a lot of it was how difficult this market is. Yeah. And there's a couple people that are in their like early 60s who are like, I want out. Like, I want out. Yeah. They can't do it. But they're wanting to stay in for longer just to hit certain goals, like a couple more years, but they're emotionally fried. Where I'm coming, like we said, I'm coming back in where I'm feeling like, I'm kind of motivated.
I can do this, yeah.
So we're all in different places, but that was a lot of the conversation about just how difficult this market is and how hard it is on people, because it's scary at so many different levels.
It's a tough market, right? Yeah. Like, it's hard. It's draining.
Yeah.
It takes a lot more work, a lot more effort. Everything's really hard. It's super competitive.
Yeah. You create a relationship, and then somebody comes in with a rate that you don't even understand how they can make it.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's going to change the whole? Do you think this is the way it's going to be forever?
No.
Or do you think it's going to go back?
I think it'll go back to a healthy balance where, we always get shopped, and getting shopped is fine.
No, it's fine.
Whatever. Yeah. But I think we'll get to a point where there's just enough business.
A little trust built back.
Yeah, and there'll be enough business where everybody's not just doing crazy stuff to win the business. Yeah. So I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, because people are doing loans for nothing now.
Yeah, they'll $500.
It's crazy.
Yeah, which is insane.
Which is not sustainable. Yeah. Like, you can't have a career where you're doing 4 loans a month at $500 a loan. It doesn't work, right? Yeah. Like, that's not how the industry was built.
Yeah, no.
So let's talk about how do you feel like you sit with these peers on
my mastermind
group. Like, we talked about this briefly. I want to bring it back up. Why is it that you don't feel like you're a peer of that?
Well, I do. I feel like I'm a peer.
They're all like, because I know you personally, and you're very successful at what you've done. You've put up, I don't even know, like over $1 billion probably in loans in your career. Maybe. You got to be close, right? I have no idea. We should look that up.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I bet you're probably between $750,000 and $1 million in $1 billion in loans since you've done in this, which for people that don't know is a lot of loans. Yeah. That's a lot of loans.
Yeah, I have no idea what that number is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In your lifetime.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. No,
and so where do you sit with that? Like, why do you feel like...
So what Blue's asking is...
You don't belong.
Yeah, so I mentioned imposter syndrome earlier.
Yes, imposter syndrome.
That was the word I used.
Thank you.
So, when Blue asked me to come on this podcast, I immediately reverted back to why? Why would you want to talk to me?
Because you're great.
I know. But I forget... And I get into this situation where I think, why would somebody want to talk to me? And it's terrible self-confidence. But it's this imposter syndrome because I forget sometimes how successful I've been. Yeah. And so I'm in this mastermind group, and I've got Sue and Philly, who's like this dynamic, and I got Denise, who's, everybody's dynamic and lovely. I can name them all.
Yeah.
And then I think, why am I here? You know, and I actually did have to look at the numbers one day, and I was beating most of them. And so I was like,
so you're like doing more loads than they are, and you're like, I'm just not as good as these people.
I know, it's just funny. So there are times in every career I know where we all question what we're doing.
Yeah.
And even
especially now, right?
Yeah. And 20 years in, I still will be like, oh, I'm not as good as somebody else. And you know, it's hard because you always compare yourself with somebody else, and you know you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
But at our previous companies, that was really easy to
culture.
do. The culture. Because every day we gotta.
That's a terrible thing about culture and sales. Right?
Yeah.
Like there was like, oh, look at what your peers are doing. Like pitch you against each other.
Yeah.
When it's really.
Well, every day we got a production report of how everybody else was doing in the company, and you would open it, and there's 250 names, and you're like, oh, I'm whatever number.
50th.
Yeah, and you're like, you know, so it's hard. Like you're always comparing yourself because there's always someone better. Yeah. There's just always is. Yeah. Like you will never be the best.
They use that to try to motivate you to go out
and it did motivate me. Like it totally.
It does work.
It totally works.
I just don't think it's like healthiest.
No, it's not the healthiest at all. And so I think it's better to just kind of have like a general idea of what's going on. So you're not totally like I have one agent who I love who is always like, "Are you busy? What are you hearing on the streets?" Because she can't tell if her slowness is her or if it's the market. Yeah. So she'll call me and say, "What's going on?" Right. Now she just knows everybody's slow. But you know, 5 years ago, I would be her barometer of what are you hearing, because I'm either really busy or really slow, and I'm trying to figure out where I compare. Yeah. So that's kind of nice to know where you stand.
Totally.
But so anyway, I always kind of struggle with imposter syndrome, and then I just have to remind myself I'm really good at my job.
Do you think it would be healthy for you to like put up those numbers, like go back and like add everything up in your life and be like, so when you get up in the morning or not, you know, when you sit down at your desk, you're like, look, you've done all this.
No, I don't.
This is what you've done in your life.
I got my own little pep talk.
You're going to be okay.
No, I don't get it.
It's like that Saturday Night Live skit with you're great.
You're wonderful. You can do this.
You can do this.
Yes, I'll just write it on my mirror. No, I'm good. I don't need to, but I do.
$825 million.
Woo! Exclamation! No, I don't need to, but I did just have that moment when you're like, I want to talk to you. I'm like, about what? And then I forget that I've been doing this for so long.
Yeah,
I still think I'm like smart. 25.
You're super smart. You're like been in this industry for a really long time. You have a great story, and you've done a lot of amazing things. Yeah. And raised kids.
I know.
So
I just forget.
And it's like, I'm like, why would you think that you would not want to have you would not have a great conversation and do a great podcast? Because I was like, because when I first called you, this was earlier, but when I first called you a couple weeks ago, you're like, oh, no.
No, can't do
You're like, can't do that. I'm like, yeah, you can. You're going to.
No, it's good. I just forget.
Yeah.
And I think actually now that the market is so slow, I just forget even more.
Yeah, no.
And then I'm like, oh, yeah. You know, so thank you. I thank you for reminding me, because I think in this kind of market, it's just tough and you get in your head.
Yeah.
And so it's good. It's a good little reminder to be like, oh yeah, I really.
Well, and that's like going back and forth between like the things of like coming in and talking to your peers and all. Exactly. Not sitting at home. It's because it's easy to get inside your head, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's easy.
And it's quiet, and it's you get used to the quiet. And it's like, okay, well, I don't need to call anybody.
Yeah, that's why you just gotta get out there and do it.
Well, this summer will be great because I have 3 teenagers and a husband all sitting in my house.
So you're out.
I'm out every day, 10 to 2.
Is that the deal?
Yeah.
You're gonna make a commitment to get
to
be out of the office?
Yeah.
I'm kind of on the same path. Like leave around 9, come home around 1 or 2.
Yeah, I figured I'd do 10 to 2, and if I'm really busy, I'll stay till 3.
Yeah.
Because then I can come home and enjoy it versus feeling guilty. And then my husband's off for the whole summer.
Yeah.
And the kids are off. Everybody's off. They're all just staring at me.
Yeah.
You know, wanting to go to California if I'm busy. So I need to get out of the house.
Is Daryl pretty close to getting
retired?
Yeah.
So he's going to retire in 4 years. He could retire.
Some time.
Well, he could retire tomorrow, but he wants to get the boys that are going into sophomore year. He wants to get them through high school, and then have one more year where you can do a 180, where you work and then you get paid another salary. So he's going to do. I forget what it's called. It's like
some teacher thing.
Yeah, some teacher. But he wants to do that, which would be great because that would be the first year of the
So then he'll just be home all the time.
He'll be home all the time.
What are you going to do all the time? That's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do when he's retired because he's been a teacher for so long?
You know, he's such a busy bee. I can't really imagine him sitting. I think he's going to start working in a bakery And
because he loves food.
He
right?
loves baking and stuff like that. So I just see him like finding a whole new path.
Cool.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome. Like second career.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
That or we're going to go live somewhere and I'll just work remotely.
I'm totally down with that.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
That's what we
part
like
of the
to
year. So, I usually end things with advice to new home buyers.
Sure.
What kind of advice do you have for home buyers?
Well, I do, like I said before, I'm passionate about somebody buying a home and having a home. Mm-hmm. And it is to create stability, it's to create financial wealth, and to create future opportunities.
Yeah.
So even though the rates are high, even though I said it's painful, some of these payments are painful, if you can afford it, I think you need to get in the market. And don't listen to the media talking about how, maybe home buying right now is not the right time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It creates so many opportunities that you have to ignore all that speak, all that media, and just go ahead and do it. And I'm passionate about it. Yeah. Like I really feel like that is what.
As long as you can afford it.
Yeah, as long as I'm not going to put you in something you're not.
Yeah.
But if you can afford it, and you can make it work, I that is what you've got to just ignore all the talk, and just get in there and do it.
To just buy the house.
Yeah, just buy the
wait.
house.
Don't sit on the sidelines.
Yeah, because housing prices are just going up. Yeah. And I mean, my kids are already saying, are we going to be able to afford houses? Like they go up. Yeah. And the client who made $250 in 5 years, my first house, I made $200,000 in 7 years.
Yeah.
And I was making $5.15 an hour.
Yeah.
That was life-changing for me.
Yeah, right?
And so I think...
When did you buy your first house?
I bought my first house in 1994 for $73,000. My mother I was making literally $5.15 an hour.
Right after she kicked you out of the house?
Yeah. A couple of years later. Yeah,
really?
A couple of years later. Yeah, a couple of years later.
She's like, but we're going to help you buy your house.
Well, yeah, what happened was I was renting a house. My company was renting a house. I was still living with clients. Yeah. And the realtor called and said, hey, we're going to put the house on the market. My company was still renting it, but we're going to put the house on the market. We're going to have showings. Do you know what that means? And I was like, yeah, my mom's a real estate agent. Oh, who? Oh, Lorinda. Oh, I know Lorinda. Oh, well, I know.
Yeah.
And so I called my mom and said, oh, my house is going to go on the market. Dan told me to tell you hi. That's my whole conversation.
Yeah.
She called me back 30 minutes later and said, you're buying the house. And I was like, and it was a dump. And I was like, really? Like, really?
She's like, you're buying this house.
Yeah. And I bought it for $73,000.
Where was it?
Talisman, like 34th and
in Boulder.
Iris. Yeah.
Okay.
Little condo, 34th and 37th and Iris. And I sold it 7 years later for $210,000.
Wow.
And that was actually the money I used to live off of while I was a social worker. It afforded me the opportunity to be a social worker longer because I basically used all the equity. But I did what I wanted to do, and I had.
Well, you sold it and probably bought another house.
Yeah, I did. I bought another house. I mean, still, I didn't use all my equity, but I bought another house in 2001.
Right.
And so that was how I got in the market, and that's where,
Amazing.
That's why I feel like, I mean, as annoyed as I was with my mother that she made me buy this dump.
Or that she kicked you out.
Yeah, exactly.
She wasn't all that bad.
Yeah, exactly. She was really, literally Thursday. You can't live here. So that was why I've always been so passionate, because if I hadn't gotten in, I mean, I was making $5.15 an hour.
That's crazy.
Like, if I hadn't gotten in then, I would not have been able to get in 7 years later.
It's so funny because, a lot of people that come on this show and ask everybody the same question. And the answers are all, right down the same line. Like, because it's an open-ended question, because you could be like, hey, check with your insurance, except my insurance agent. He was like, make sure it's not in a fire zone, make sure it's this and that. But it's like, everybody that's like a real estate agent or a mortgage person is like, just get in. Like, just get in. Yeah, just get into the market.
Chatter. Get in.
Just buy a house, because you're going to make a ton of money on it, and it's going to be the best way you're going to build wealth for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Everybody kind of says the same thing.
I guess the other thing I would say is, you're not buying your dream house, your first house.
And they say that too.
Because it's just, you're not, Don't set your expectations so high that
it's a building. It's a stair step, right? Like, you just buy your first house.
Yeah.
And then
you
get the next
condo,
one.
then you get a townhouse. Like, you don't have to
just buy
keep these houses
just buy
forever.
when you're young, because you're going to start making money.
I would have been 25, 26 when I bought my first place. And really, it was all because of my mother.
Yeah. But I think that's a good age.
Yeah. It was perfect. It was great.
25, 26. Because then it's like, you're not quite in a relationship. You're not quite married.
Yeah.
And then, like, 31, 32, it seems like where everybody kind of gets married. And then you buy your next house.
Yeah.
And kind of try to keep the first one as an investment property. Because over time, that's when you're going to build a big portfolio, right?
I know. I wish I had done that. But, living
hindsight is 20/20.
I mean, my mom wishes she bought all those houses off of 30th and Arapahoe, 30th and Baseline.
Well, anybody in Boulder.
Yeah, but they were 10 or 15, 25,000 when she was a real estate agent.
Yeah.
She's like, why didn't I not pick up 4 of them?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Living
I
there.
mean,
Yeah.
they're worth millions now. So
Yeah.
they'd be worth a lot. Well, I just wanted to thank you, Alicia, for coming on my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It was fun, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it was
Are you
good.
glad you did it?
I am glad I did it.
Good.
Yes, it was fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and hopefully we can. I'll have you back on in a little while.
Well, thanks. We'll think of something else to talk about.